Hey everyone, welcome back to the Let's Talk Live show with me, John. And today we're going to be talking all things Tom Cruise and all of his best and worst movies. And anything we want to come to 4K, we'll be talking about that today. Let's see who's here. Kevin L's here. What's up, Kevin? Good to see you, buddy. And he asked right off the bat, what is the first Tom Cruise movie you ever saw in theaters? In theaters. Oh, that's a tough one. I was going to say the first one I ever saw was definitely Days of Thunder, which is still probably my favorite Tom Cruise movie, if you can believe that one. But I'm a NASCAR fan. As ridiculous that is, Michael Rucker has probably been living in my life longer than most people. I've been living with Michael Rucker. I feel like most people didn't really find out about him as far as younger viewers go until we got to the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. But the first one, impressive Tony. Hey, what's up, brother? Congrats on 2000. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all your support, buddy. And so you're almost at 1500. You've been going up quick, man. Yeah, if you guys haven't subscribed to the impressive Tony, make sure you guys are doing that because his channel is great and he has some of the best movie reviews on the internet, especially for new releases and trailer reactions. Have you seen his entire filmography? Kevin L says, and you know all of his movies on Blu-rays. I actually haven't seen every single movie, and one of the movies is a bad one. I haven't seen actually Legend, the Ridley Scott movie he did in 1985. I've read the reviews on it, and like it just doesn't seem like I'm not a big, huge fantasy film guy, and that one especially doesn't look like I'd love it, and the reviews aren't great. And it was really early in his career. You know, Tom Cruise really took off in 1986 with both Top Gun and The Color of Money. And I think that's the real big one I haven't seen. Everything else, I'm pretty sure I have seen. I went down this filmography, and I think I've hit every other one at least once. You know, there's ones I don't go back to. Like I saw them and I was one and done, like The Last Samurai and the Jack Reacher movies that he did. I did not love those. And so I don't own all of his movies on Blu-ray or 4K. Really, I'm hesitant to buy movies of his on Blu-ray because I feel like a lot of his films do eventually come to 4K. Like we got Edge of Tomorrow last year. This year we just got Vanilla Sky and The Firm. You know, the Mission Impossibles. Like I bought Oblivion on Blu-ray, and now that has a 4K. So I haven't gotten that 4K yet because of that. So I'm waiting. Like The Color of Money, I had to own on Blu-ray because I love that movie, even though that Blu-ray is one of the worst Blu-rays around, and Disney has the rights to that. So we might not get that on 4K anytime soon. There was that rumor for a little while that we were going to get it, but as long as Disney is holding the rights to The Color of Money on 4K, or just in general owning the film rights, we're not going to get that on Blu-ray anytime soon. I think you can actually watch The Color of Money, if I'm correct, on Disney Plus, which is crazy. So, you know, you can watch that movie there. The Blu-rays, it's just it's unfortunate because it's really one of the better movies in his filmography as far as acting goes. You know, he pretty much was like in the 80s, you know, he got really like people started to take notice of him in 1983 with The Outsiders. And then obviously later in the decade, you know, Top Gun is probably what made him a superstar. And then Born on the 4th of July with Oliver Stone, and that's got him his first Academy Award nomination. And then as far as acting goes, you know, Rain Man was a big time hit. And then it wasn't really until the 90s when we started to see action star Tom Cruise. Yeah, he did some of the stuff with Tony Scott, but then by the 90s, that's pretty much he was like, you know, he'd do an action film, a drama film, an action film, a drama film. That was pretty much how he was balancing that out. And then Kevin L just asked, have you ever met Tom Cruise? If so, what was he like? I haven't met Tom Cruise. I don't know if I want to meet Tom Cruise. Yeah, he's one of my favorite actors. You know, we joke around here on the channel. I remember Vex used to always tell, like, me and Matt were together, how we had a man crush on Tom Cruise because we love Tom Cruise movies. That's true. We absolutely love Tom Cruise movies. But the guy Tom Cruise, by all accounts, he seems like a little bit strange. Although I've heard on set he's like the nicest guy. He comes up, shakes everybody's hand. You know, he's always willing to do anything, obviously, as far as he has great friendships with Christopher McQuarrie and J.J. Abrams. Everybody says he's a nice guy, but he's also a little bit weird. And a lot of that, I think, gets accounted to the whole Church of Scientology thing, which, you know, that's to each their own. Whatever he wants to believe, he wants to believe. But I think that has always kind of, like, you know, hurt his public image in a way. And that's why when he did Tropic Thunder, that like kind of rebuilt like how people perceived him, because when he was jumping on Oprah's couch and screaming about how much he loved Katie Holmes, people started to get a little turned off by the actor of Tom Cruise. But the guy never really misses as far as his performances go. You know, sometimes you could argue like like the Mummy remake. I don't think that movie's as bad as everyone says it is, but it's also not that great of a movie. and Thomas Story wrote, "Go away." I don't even know who Thomas Story is, or should I know who that is? Do I know who that is? I don't know who that is. But maybe that's somebody who's related to Tom Cruise who's upset with me saying that his church is weird. But again with Tom Cruise and everything like that. Once he got into like the late '90s, Tom Cruise again, like that's one movie I really want on 4K is Eyes Wide Shut because Stanley Kubrick has never actually brought his stuff. Like, all of his movies pretty much have come to 4K, except for Eyes Wide Shut. And I'm not too sure why. Maybe it has something to do with who's holding the rights to it. I have to actually take a look. The Blu-ray itself is it's all right, but it really needs a 4K upgrade, if I remember correctly. That was the first time he worked with Stanley Kubrick. And actually, he ended up narrating a documentary about Stanley Kubrick in 2001, the same year he did Vanilla Sky, which I know that it's a lot of people's favorite movie from him. So that's one of those ones. My favorite Tom Cruise movie, though, is still always going to be Days of Thunder. So sorry, guys, my dog. It's always going to be Days of Thunder just because that's just nostalgic for me. I know it's just Top Gun on wheels. Everyone loves Top Gun. I love Top Gun too. Top Gun is an almost flawless 80s action movie, but it's very much soaked in the 80s. You get the Kenny Loggins soundtrack, the volleyball scene, all that stuff is great. But that's all stuff that's like really in the 80s. And if you can believe it, Tom Cruise's actual his highest grossing film of all time was actually last year's Top Gun Maverick, the movie that kind of saved theaters in a way when you think about it, because other than that movie and Super Mario Bros, we haven't actually had, I think, a hit film as far as in theaters go from other movies. Like everyone else hasn't been that great. So everything else has kind of been flattering. We've kind of been talking about how the box office has been doing lately. So everyone's kind of hyping up Mission Impossible. Some people have seen it. The Impressive Tony actually has his review out. If you want to check that out, he already saw that. I'm seeing it on Monday. Looking forward to the Mission Impossible franchise. That's when he really started to get producer Tom Cruise. Because Tom Cruise, actually, believe it or not, in the '90s, him and Paula Wagner had a production company. They made their first project was Mission Impossible. Before that, Mission Impossible was just a TV show. That's why people were kind of offended. Like the character that John Voight plays in that movie was a big deal because that was a character that was on the original TV show. They turned a hero into a villain. So people who are fans of the 1960s TV show were pretty offended by the fact that they made that guy a villain. But they spun it around and turned the main character of Ethan Hunt, who originally starts out as a side character. And then, eventually that becomes the leader of the IMF super agent, Ethan Hunt, the guy who always, unfortunately, gets in trouble for betraying his government that they try and at least frame him for, even though he's the only one trying to save the day. That's what Mission Impossible means. So I always love that kind of movie. And Kevin L. asks, what do you think about him working with Christopher Nolan? I would absolutely love him to work with Christopher Nolan. I don't know if you saw this today, actually, Kevin, that Christopher Nolan said that there is absolutely no CGI shots in the new Oppenheimer movie. That's it. Like, it's all done physically. Everything is practical effects, which I thought was incredible. So I would absolutely think that Tom Cruise and Christopher Nolan would be a match made in heaven. They both love filmmaking. And I remember when Tenet came out, Tom Cruise, that was still around the pandemic time. They made a big deal. He went and saw Tenet in theaters. So he was hyping up Christopher Nolan then, talking about him and his filmmaking. And even though like they kind of had that little rivalry recently where they kind of wanted Oppenheimer and Barbie to move a little bit to have some more breathing room for Mission Impossible and have the prime IMAX theaters, because IMAX cameras were used for Mission Impossible 2, just not to the extent of Oppenheimer. But Tom Cruise is still out there promoting Barbie and Oppenheimer. So I think it would be a match made in heaven. And Impressive Tony said, fun fact, the original Mission Impossible series was produced by Lucille Ball from I Love Lucy. Really? I had no idea. That's true? Wow. I knew Lucille Ball was a big deal back then. My wife is a huge Lucille Ball fan. I wonder if she actually knows that. I'm going to have to pass that information along to her, because that is awesome. I had no idea that she was the producer on that. That's so cool. Oh my God. Yup. Desilu Studios. Wow. I swear to God, I never knew that. That's awesome. Yeah, wow. I guess she was. I know that she was a big deal as far as like behind the scenes stuff. I watched a documentary about her. As far as like especially back in the time with her and her husband. That was a early interracial marriage. That was a big deal. And as far as females in comedy goes, she's still one of the greatest comedians ever. Her physical comedy was is fantastic. I never knew that she was behind that. Look at that. Like, you could trace back the Mission Impossible series all the way back to Lucille Ball. That's so awesome. She also produced the original Star Trek series. That I never knew either. Wow, I didn't realize that she was that big of a producer. Like, I knew she produced stuff. I knew she had like her hand in a lot of the comedy scene, and obviously her sitcom is one of the most famous sitcoms of all time. And that's so crazy. I can't believe she produced the original Star Trek series too. That's so cool. That she is wow, she really was one of the queens of Hollywood, huh? I mean, my God. I mean, I Love Lucy still stands the test of time. You can go back and watch that right now. I haven't gone back and watched the original Star Trek series or Mission Impossible series to know if those still hold up. I imagine they're a little rough. That's kind of what's held me back from actually rewatching the Mission Impossible series. I mean, in general, is like going back and restarting Star Trek. That's why I haven't gone and watched the movies really, is because I just haven't been able to like know where to start as far as that goes because there's just so much. But yeah, circling back to Tom Cruise and all of this, which is I can't believe that still. It what he has done so far recently, like he's really he's like the ambassador now for movies. He's the guy that's trying to save theaters. He doesn't want to see theaters fade away. He loves making movies. Everything that I saw in any of like when I was watching all the extras for all the Mission Impossible movies just show that this guy loves making movies. He's very hands-on, like, because he produces the Mission Impossible movies especially, but he also produces most of his movies. So he gets very hands-on. He helps choose the director, a director that's going to want to work with him, a director he wants to work with. That's always how it goes. Him and Christopher Gord clearly have a great working relationship. I thought he had a good working relationship with Steven Spielberg. I remember hearing something that, they because they did Minority Report and then War of the Worlds a couple years later, and then they kind of fell off. They didn't work together again, and I don't know why, because I thought they had two successful movies. War of the Worlds is a very underrated one in both of their filmographies. It kind of just came and went, but that was a great one. Do you think Tom Cruise would be a good director? Kevin L said. I'm not too sure. And I actually, when I was going through his filmography before this started, I was looking to see if he ever did TV. And the only TV credit he has, I think, was for a show from 1993 called Falling Angels, and it says that he was a director on it. So maybe he was thinking about directing, and then he kind of pulled away from it. But it's actually crazy to me that this guy who came up in the 1980s, everybody who came up in the 1980s at least did TV at some point. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, Bruce Willis got his start on TV. It's crazy to me. Tom Hanks with Bosom Buddies, like, it's crazy to me that actually he never did TV before. Like, I kind of blew my mind. So I don't know if he'd be a good director. I think that he looks at movies in general as like a project with more than just one person. It's weird when we talk about movies, we usually talk about the director and we talk about the star. We don't really talk too much about the producers. We know they're out there. We don't really like the writers get some credit usually if they're like connected to the director, but for the most part, we always bring up the director and the star. Meanwhile, these are all projects made by groups of people, all of them willing participants, all of them putting all of their hard-earned time into these making these movies, but we give it all to them. And I think Tom Cruise doesn't. I think Tom Cruise recognizes that it takes a whole team of people to make these movies. So when he gets like when he picks a director, he knows that he's going to work with the director. Especially in like the last 15 years, if you look, Tom Cruise hasn't put out as many movies, and they're all usually under the same production company. It's not like how it was back in like the 90s where he was, going kind of studio to studio. The directors he wanted to work with, he would choose pretty much, like, he can work with anyone by that point. Once he started working with Ridley Scott and Tony Scott, that was pretty much it as far as he was able to work with everybody. And that's kind of where things kind of took off for him, as far as being the producer. And I think it opened up all those doors for him. But do I think that he'd be a good director? I don't know. That's a tough call. He has proven many times that he's really just a hands-on actor as far as things. He knows the shots as well, but I don't know if he'd be a good director. It's weird though, because he's such a nice guy. You would think that he would probably be a great director in that sense, because he seems like somebody that everyone gets along with, but maybe he just likes to act. So, not everybody has to end up being a director. I mean, we're seeing that a lot now with guys like Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper is pretty much like, he's doing the actor director thing. Everybody, I think most big time actors give the directing thing a shot once. De Niro with the Bronx Tale, like the even this weekend when Insidious, The Red Door, that movie directed by Patrick Wilson. That was his directorial debut. He was really just known just as an actor, pretty much. So it was pretty cool to see him pop up in there, do that with job, do the directing thing, do the director producer thing. That's cool, but I don't know if Tom Cruise is the kind of guy for it. I think he likes to have everything just work together as a team, in my opinion. But what do you guys think? What do you think is like the best Tom Cruise movie or the best Tom Cruise movie? What do you guys think of his 4Ks? Because he's had a lot of his films come to 4K, which and pretty much for the most part, they're really good. I think the Days of Thunder 4K is one of the most underrated 4Ks that's ever been put out, in my opinion. Red Bull. Top Gun Maverick, I think might actually be the standard as far as 4Ks go. I think that's actually the best 4K that's ever come out, in my opinion. And I mean, it hits all the benchmarks as far as an Atmos track, visuals go. It really is just the total package. Even the Top Gun 4K that came out just a few years ago, the original one that actually came out with War of the Worlds and Days of Thunder, the Tom Cruise pack there that they had going on, that was a great 4K as well. And then Edge of Tomorrow, I thought was a good 4K. Although I was talking to Matt recently, and he said he wasn't that impressed with Edge of Tomorrow on 4K, which I thought was surprising because I thought that was actually a really good 4K, in my opinion. I thought that put on a pretty good showpiece. I didn't think it was the greatest 4K, but he was pretty disappointed on it, which was surprising to me, if I'm being honest. So I'm not too sure why he didn't love that. What other movies has he had come to 4K? Like I said, I haven't seen the Oblivion 4K yet. I don't know if it's better than the Blu-ray. I think they came. What year was Oblivion? Like 2015 or something like that. That was kind of that little run there where he was doing movies like American Made, I think it was. And he had just these random movies. Jack Reacher was a pretty big movie, but they even got a sequel. I just didn't love those movies. I just found them to be very generic. Same thing with The Mummy. Like, they're not bad, but they're just very generic, and they kind of seem out of place for what Tom Cruise movies were at the time. And then Kevin Al says, I want a 4K for Color and Money. I want a 4K for that so bad. That's probably at the top of my list of Tom Cruise movies I want on 4K. It's probably near the top of my list of movies that I just want on 4K in general because it's just such a well-made movie. It's a Martin Scorsese movie. We're getting Martin Scorsese movies here and there on 4K. They come out, they trickle out slowly. Like this month, we're getting both After Hours and Hugo on 4K, so that's pretty cool. But for the most part, and we got Wolf of Wall Street, but like Goodfellas needs an updated 4K really bad. But Casino's 4K is pretty good. But Color of Money is one that I'm surprised that it's got such a great score in there that hasn't come to 4K yet. That one is I get why. I know it's wrapped up in rights issues, just like Aliens and anything that was kind of taken from Fox. Fight Club. Fight Club's another one that for such a popular movie that needs a 4K release. The fact we haven't gotten Fight Club, which is one of the most popular films, that could also be David Lynch. A lot of David Lynch movies haven't come to 4K either, which is pretty crazy in my opinion because again, he makes such beautiful looking movies. They would just transfer so well to the 4K format. You would think, hey, eventually this is going to come to 4K Blu-ray. But unfortunately, a lot of that stuff comes down to rights. I just will never understand why a studio itself will not like lease out the rights of something. Like we heard about the Warner Brothers deal going on with their musical rights and how they were going to sell them off for about $500 million from like musical tracks from their movies and television, things that were considered a legacy to the studio of Warner Brothers. So that was pretty shocking. But now, you could just lease them, like lease the rights out, like what happened with Wally and Disney last year. Why can't they lease out the rights of The Color of Money to say the Criterion Collection? The Color of Money, I think, is something that would be worthy of the Criterion Collection. That's the only Paul Newman Academy Award he ever won was for that movie. He didn't even win it for The Hustler, where he plays the same role. So I think that's something that definitely would translate well to the Criterion Collection. But if not, Arrow Video, I think they would do it well too. I think they would definitely do that movie justice because it's still a sports movie. Technically, I mean, yeah, it still feels like a Scorsese movie, but it's still a sports movie. So that's one movie I would definitely love to see come to 4K. I 100% agree with you, Kevin. The Outsiders. Everyone always kind of, that movie was just a hodgepodge of 80s actors popping up. You get Rob Lowe, Ralph, what's his name? Ralph Macchio. I've met him quite a few times, Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid. He lives right in the same town as me, and I've cut his cold cuts when I used to work at the local supermarket deli department. He used to come in all the time. He's a cool guy, actually, really nice guy. Who else was in that movie besides the two of them? You know, you got, I think it was a young, who else? Everyone, that I mean, Do It for Johnny. That movie was Matt Dillon. It was just a bunch of '80s actors coming up all before they got their big breaks. You know, a couple years later, that's Risky Business came out, and that was probably where most people first saw Tom Cruise sliding across the floor in his underwear. So that's where he really kind of took off like a rocket, in my opinion. Then from there on, I think because that was what, 83, and then he didn't do any movies in 84, and then in 85, that's when he had, you know, the big time Legend, and then 86 was Color Money and Top Gun. And then I don't know if he did anything in 87, but then in 88 he did Rain Man, which we just got on 4K this year, and Cocktail, which is incredibly underrated. Yes, that movie is ridiculous. But if you ever listen to Tom Cruise singing Addicted to Love, that is one of the best scenes in the film history, in my opinion. I just absolutely love watching him sing that. That just shows you that Tom Cruise is always down and willing to do anything that you ask him. He's game for anything. So I always thought that was a pretty cool scene, in my opinion. You know, the story's ridiculous. They're bartenders, but it's not the first and it's not the last movie to deal with bartenders and bouncers and clubs and everything like that. But it's a little ridiculous and over the top, but I really enjoy that movie. Also, really enjoy The Firm. A couple of years later, 1992, I want to say that was another one that we just got the 4K of that, and I thought that was a great 4K as well. Yeah, and then also through the 90s, Jerry Maguire was a big one. He didn't win an Academy Award for that, but Cuban Gooding Jr. did. He actually, I believe, won the Golden Globe that year for that. He returned all his Golden Globes a couple of years ago when, you know, everything that happened with the Golden Globes and how they were pretty much, you know, they're very, I was like around the time when, you know, they're giving Academy Awards to undeserving performers. They weren't giving anything to like black actors or black actresses at the time. The Golden Globes was really the king of that because the Hollywood Foreign Press, and there's only like what, like not as many people in there. Like the Academy is like, I believe, over 900 voters now. And the Hollywood Foreign Press is only like, I don't know what it was at the time, but it was really like not even close to that. So it was a very bipartisan thing, especially if you guys know about what happened in the 90s with, you know, guys like the Weinsteins, like, you know, Harvey Weinstein basically buying Academy Awards. That's how you get Shakespeare in Love winning over Saving Private Ryan. Saving Private Ryan is arguably, and for most people will say, a way better film than Shakespeare in Love. I've actually only seen Shakespeare in Love once, though. So, you guys have any other questions you want answered? Feel free to ask anything. We don't have to just talk about Tom Cruise while we're in here. You know, you can talk about whatever you guys want. So, feel free. Don't hold back. I'm a very willing participant in this because I know that I don't know if you guys want to talk about like Interview with a Vampire. That movie was it's all right. I'm not a big fan of that one either. You know, obviously we get Magnolia at the very end of the decade with the same year as Eyes Wide Shut. In the early 2000s, like 2000, Mission Impossible 2 was a pretty big deal. Do you guys remember that he was in Goldeneye? Goldfinger. He plays Austin Powers in a spoof of Austin Powers if they were making an Austin Powers movie about that. And I think Danny DeVito played Mini Me at the time. So I thought that was pretty funny. MD wrote Night and Day. Oh my God, Night and Day. That one never gets brought up. What year was that? Was that it was either early 90s or early 2000s. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank on that. But Night and Day is definitely, that's one that gets very underappreciated. What do you think? Impressive Tony said, what do you think is Tom Cruise's best performance? For me, it's Collateral. I just showed my girlfriend that movie and she feels the same. Actually, Tony, I 100% agree with you. I think Collateral is by far his best performance because it goes against type. He plays the villain. He never plays the villain. That's the only time I really can think of like where he was just an out and out cold-hearted villain. And they even dress him different. Like they make him look purposely like they dye his hair that gray. He's wearing a gray suit. He just blends into a crowd. I mean, I love the scene where he like, is that my briefcase? Or was it Yo Holmes? Is that my briefcase? And then he shoots the two guys in cold blood. I mean, and Michael Mann's audio design with that is also perfect. But I love him in that movie. He's just so cold, and yet like the scenes like when he brings him and Jamie Foxx into the hospital to see his mother, and he's like trying to act like he's above Jamie Foxx. You know what he does to Jamie Foxx in that movie is absolutely horrible. And the fact that when you find out what he would have done to him if he didn't intervene, yeah, that's a cold-hearted man right there, Vincent. And I do think that that's his best performance, in my opinion, as well. I mean, if you're gonna, and then after that, I love his performance in Rain Man too. I think that's one where, like, yeah, I've heard arguments that like that's a similar arc that he plays in a lot of his movies, and it's true. Like Top Gun, Days of Thunder, where he plays the arc of, and even in Magnolia, where he has the arc of he starts out the movie as just your stereotypical asshole. He's just not a good guy. He needs to learn his lesson. He's not like a super bad person. He's just kind of like a dick in a way. He's not a killer or anything like that, except in Collateral. But for the most part, he always has to learn to appreciate and respect other humans, and that's why in Rain Man he has to, like, it takes his brother who has a mental disability for him to learn that there are good people in the world, because he always feels like, especially in Rain Man, where he's got his back against the wall and he has to defend himself at all times or prove himself, because his father never appreciated him or loved him or respected him. So now he's always just out to prove himself. But he gets a brother, and a brother who, obviously he doesn't have the arc in that movie, Dustin Hoffman, but Tom Cruise has the arc, and Tom Cruise learns his lesson by the very end of that movie. So I really love his arc in that movie. Although I don't know if you guys watch the rewatchables or listen to the rewatchables. They always talk about how Tom Cruise holds a cigarette in that movie. So now I can't unsee it. I guess Tom Cruise isn't a smoker, but it's ridiculous the way, if you ever pay attention to how his fingers are when he's holding a cigarette. And they also brought up that probably the best movie smoker is Robert De Niro in Goodfellas. And I imagine Robert De Niro definitely at the time was a smoker, because before a certain time, that's all everyone was doing was smoking cigarettes. So I see exactly what people are saying about that. Kevin L said we needed 4K for Risky Business. That's one I'm surprised hasn't come to 4K. And I could have swore, I could be wrong on this and I'm mistaking it, but I thought I remember hearing that was going to come to 4K. That's considered a classic at this point. I was reading about a little bit about that before I came on here, about like how that's a performance of his, and that movie in general is considered a big part of Gen X. So it's surprising that movie hasn't gotten a 4K release. And I imagine that's probably one where the studio, I don't know what studio it was, but I'm sure it wasn't. If it was Paramount that hasn't come to 4K, that's horrible, because that's pretty much who he works with now. But Paramount has pretty much put out all of his movies that they've done together on 4K. And if not, they're cleaning up and going through that right now. We've gotten really lucky with a lot of his movies coming to 4K. It's just weird that there's some that are very obvious that should have come to 4K. And then there's movies that I like. I really didn't expect The Firm to come to 4K as soon as it did, or Vanilla Sky. Those two really surprised me, because they have their fans, but they're not like their most popular Tom Cruise movies. Like, obviously the Top Guns and the Mission Impossibles are probably his most famous movies, but I was really surprised that those movies came to 4K before certain other movies. Minority Report's the big one that hasn't come to 4K. That's Steven Spielberg. It's another guy. We've gotten a lot of his 4K, so I'm really surprised. Lord Raiden wrote to at Kevin L. He'd be a terrible director. He's too crazy and he'd drive everyone off the set. He's crazy, but he's awesome though. Like he cares. He's just a little bit off the wall. Rico Gomez wrote, "Risky Business Blu-ray price has gone low, so a 4K of that must be in the work." Yeah, so I must not be crazy. Maybe I did hear about it coming. I thought I heard about it coming at least a few months ago, because I do think that that's a movie that's so popular that it has to come to 4K at some point. And then, the real outlier, I guess, other than Risky Business, is Minority Report. Like I said, just because I feel like that movie is very popular. It's a Steven Spielberg film. Many people want that movie on 4K. I also think that's one of his best movies and one of Steven Spielberg's best movie. That was coming around that. He did two movies that year. He did that, and he also did Catch Me If You Can. Same year. Steven Spielberg loves those 2 days. Lord Raiden said, "Impressive, Tony. Her company is also the reason we got the original Star Trek." See, that's, I didn't know that, the Star Trek the motion picture, I assume. Which I have that. I have to give that one another rewatch, because I got to be honest, that movie was it was very slow for me. But again, that was me dipping my toes into Star Trek. I've never really gone back into it. And I really think I would love the Star Trek movies and the Star Trek show, to be honest, because as much as I know that you can't really, like, I always love the movies. What is it? The Fan, I think it was something, not The Fan. I don't remember what the movie, Fanboys, where they were like the Star Trek fans versus the Star Wars fans. I always thought that was really funny. Um, Impressive. So Lord Raider wrote, "No, Desilu Productions made the original TV show." Yeah, that's what Impressive Tony was saying earlier, that they made the original TV show. He actually wrote that. So that is impressive. I just can't believe that their production, I guess, made that show. That's incredible to me. That's something that's gonna definitely stick with me. And a fun fact that I never knew. I can't believe that she did that. That just shows you again. I know I said it earlier in the stream that she was just such a hands-on person with it. Original Star Trek TV show, not the movie. Yeah, she had her part in help creating that. That just shows you like, in the Mission Impossible show how good she really was. She's awesome. And Mission Impossible TV. Yeah, she was incredible. Lucille Ball. She was one of the best. Like I was saying earlier before, the way she came on here in the world with her sitcom and what that sitcom did back in the 1950s, like that is still one of my wife's favorite shows. We still put on episodes, well she does all the time, and I'll sit there and she'll still just laugh her ass off like she's never seen anything that funny in her life before. And it's hysterical. Shamrock Balls wrote, sorry I'm late to the cruise fest. No problem, Shamrock, as long as you can make it, we're still going here, still got some time, so you're not too late at all. What's your favorite Tom Cruise movie, Shamrock? I'm very curious about that. Feel free to let me know what you guys think is your favorite. Like I keep going off and saying, I'm going to say it again, and I don't care. Days of Thunder. All right, Cole Trickle. Cole Trickle's my man. Him versus Rowdy Burns is one of the greatest NASCAR rivalries, and of course, it has to be fake. So I absolutely love that movie. And again, that 4K is fantastic. If you haven't gotten the chance to get that one, if you could get that on sale, it's an absolute steal. The original Fuzz is here. Hey John, how are you? I'll have to catch most of it on replay, but just wanted to chime in real quick. Always appreciate you, man. Thanks, Fuzz. I appreciate you chiming in here, buddy. Guys, make sure if you haven't headed over to his channel yet, the original Fuzz. It's a great channel, and he just put up his top 25 movies of the 1980s today. I checked out his list earlier today. Great list. So make sure you guys head over there. Just like the impressive Tony, make sure you guys head over there and check out their channels. Give them a subscribe because they're both great guys. Been fans of this channel since pretty early on too. So I remember the original Fuzz before that was his name. MD, thoughts on the Scream Factory announcements? Actually, I'll be talking more about that tomorrow, but my initial reactions, I'm a little upset that My Bloody Valentine got announced on 4K because I just bought that on Blu-ray around Valentine's Day, and that's usually how that goes. But I'm so excited for Natural Born Killers to come to 4K. I haven't seen that movie in years. I always like the first time I saw that movie, it kind of threw me off, but I still really like that movie. The fact that what's it called? I really like the way that movie is just shot. It feels like a gigantic acid trip, and then you get Robert Downey Jr. in there, Tommy Lee Jones, just playing off the wall characters. I really love that movie's message, basically about our obsession with serial killers. And little did they know that would happen now with True Crime Podcast. So that's absolutely crazy. What's it called? So I'm very excited for that. The Lost City of Z is another one I'm very interested in checking out too on 4K when that comes out. I haven't seen that movie yet, but Charlie Hunnam's in, and I remember having pretty decent reviews. But those are the three big things I'm excited about. My Bloody Valentine, I'm gonna have to get the 4K. I wasn't planning on it but the Blu-ray itself is great, and the movie is very enjoyable. And there's actually shots in that movie that I think are going to translate great to 4K. Lord Raiden said, I typically find Tom Cruise annoying, but Rain Man and Color Money, he's tolerable. I can respect that. I know that there's a lot of people who don't appreciate Tom Cruise, and I can totally get that. I remember I got a little turned off by him too, guys, once that like thing happened. I think it was 2006 with the couch jumping. I was like, should I be a fan of this guy? He seems a little weird. Impressive Tony wrote, yeah, dude, the fact that she had a sitcom with a female main character in a mixed race marriage is nuts for the time it came out. Lucy is a G for sure. She was. That's one thing that I always loved about her. She was so ahead of her time when it comes to, as far as like just think about 1950s and 60s. The civil rights movement hadn't really fully taken place until the 1960s. To have an interracial marriage with a Cuban man on TV at the time, and they were married in real life as well. So like for her to be at the forefront of that, a female comedian too, and to be what she is, it's unbelievable what she was able to do. She was very ahead of her time. And just on top of that, she was just out and out funny. She was hysterical. So Lucille Ball is just one of the queens of this. And impressive Tony wrote, you just subbed to the impressive Tony, to the original Fuzz. Got to run for now, though. Have a great rest of your weekend, everyone. Thanks, Tony, for stopping in here. I really appreciate it, man. He actually, the impressive Tony, I got to throw him another thank you. He really helped get the look of the show down, just because I taught myself all of this stuff, but he really helped me as far as getting the look of it, like, adjusting saturation, coolness, and hotness. I really did appreciate that about him. So that was something that I just got to thank him for that. That was really nice of him. He didn't have to go out of his way to help me out with that, and I really appreciate it. And the Original Fuzz said thanks to him for subscribing because, again, Original Fuzz, great channel as well. And Shamrock Balls Road, not a big Cruise fan, John, but he's a very good actor. I think his best performance is Born on the 4th of July. Yeah, that's one that he really is good on. Speaking of Oliver Stone, since we were just talking about Natural Born Killers and his 4K, that's an Oliver Stone movie. Oliver Stone obviously loves to dabble in Vietnam, and that's really dealing with a man coming back from Vietnam and the hell of what that was. And that is a great Cruise performance. It really is. That's kind of one that doesn't get brought up a lot anymore. I know that was a big one. I especially remember when I first started getting in the movies, like in the early 2000s. That was one like, oh, if you're a Tom Cruise guy, you got to go check out Born on the 4th of July. And I agree. It absolutely is one of those movies that you have to see. And then Kevin Alvarez, best Tom Cruise movie from each decade. 1980s, I'm going to go with, you would think I'd go with Top Gun, right? But I think I'm going to go with Rain Man because I think that's his best performance for sure. In the 1990s, I'm taking Days of Thunder. In the 2000s, from 2000 to 2009, I think I'm taking Collateral. That's definitely his best performance from the 2000s. The 2010s, I'm gonna take Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol because that's the best Mission Impossible movie, and that's the best movie from the year it came out, 2011 for sure. And then after that, I would probably have to go with in the 2020s Top Gun Maverick. I mean, it's been early so far. That's really all he's had come out this decade. Obviously, COVID has screwed that up. I haven't seen Dead Reckoning yet, but I think those are the best for each of those decades. What Raiden wrote, I'll still be seeing Mission Impossible Thursdays. It's Tight Word Thursday, and all shows, premieres included, are $5 at the local theater. That's awesome, buddy. Yeah, definitely if you can check that out. I'm seeing it on Monday. They're doing like an early screening at AMC, so I'm going to check it out then. The Original Fuzz wrote about the impressive Tony has a great channel. I'm already sub, been enjoying his content. Yeah, he does great work. I mean, listen, we got a lot of great people out there doing some great work between you, Fuzz, and him. Getting some great reviews out there, some great videos. We've been very fortunate lately getting some people doing some great work, and the community itself is awesome. MD wrote, 4K movies that need a redo. Mine is the Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, that's a big one that I don't understand. That just came out last year. How did they screw that up? And I'm guessing they were trying to rush it out for an anniversary, but that one was bad. That was really disappointing because that should be a great 4K, but that's Disney just fumbling the ball again, unfortunately. That's kind of what Disney does. That's one of their biggest properties ever in Pirates of the Caribbean movies. People they still keep trying to pump those out, even though like they've really run their course. The original trilogy is good, obviously. Curse of the Black Pearl. I'm a big fan of Dead Man's Chest. That one I want on 4K. I'm hoping that eventually we get a set with them all on 4K, and then they got to just do it over because yeah, that one was a bad one. I don't know. So if I had to pick three that absolutely need a redo, besides that, I think Goodfellas needs a redo. As far as 4Ks, that one's pretty awful. Terminator 2 is the most obvious one. Everyone's been complaining about that one since we got it, but we still haven't gotten any other James Cameron movies on 4K except for the Avatars recently. So I don't expect to redo of that anytime soon. And then Planes, Trains, and Automobiles from last year was a huge disappointment. That is still my favorite John Hughes movie. It's my favorite John Candy movie. It's my favorite Steve Martin movie. That movie needs a 4K upgrade in the worst way. The one we got, I'll try it again in this fall, one more time, and then we'll see. But I really didn't like that. Shamrock Balls wrote, I do like Top Gun, Rain Man, A Few Good Men, Interview with the Vampire, Eyes Wide Shut, and War of the Worlds. I agree. The other four look good. Well, yeah, those are on Blu-ray as far as the Pirates of the Caribbean. So the Blu-rays weren't that bad. The 4K what they did. Yeah, I didn't bring up actually yet A Few Good Men, but he is great in that as Lieutenant Caffey. I love his performance in that movie. That's another one where classic Tom Cruise has to learn, like, he's a cocky, arrogant lawyer who believes that he gets it done. He believes that I'll come to a settlement. That's always what he does. He's not a trial lawyer yet. He's still young, but he's so confident that he can get the deal done. But he has to learn. That's why Demi Moore is so hesitant to work with him. She sees this like cocky, brash, young, hotshot lawyer that has to come in here. Of course, he has to learn his lesson. And then, of course, he at the very end of the day, not only does he learn his lesson, but he outsmarts Jack Nicholson, and Jack Nicholson has the best performance in that movie by far anyway, because he steals it at the very end. But he outsmarts Jack Nicholson on the stand. He thinks that this guy's got one over on him. He knows exactly what to do with Jack Nicholson's character. Jack Nicholson's character is all about respect. He doesn't want to be disrespected. He believes that what he is doing is the right thing. So all that Tom Cruise had to do was work that ego, work that arrogance of Jack Nicholson and spin it. And then you get that classic line, you want me on the wall, you need me on that wall. And then, of course, you want the truth, you can't handle the truth. That was, classic stuff right there. The other, imports. Oh, okay. So the other four Pirates of the Caribbean movies are 4K, but they're imports. Okay, I see what you're saying. Um, yeah, actually, what's funny is my Blu-rays are imports. I have a nice collection with the first four films, and I haven't bought any since. I think the last one or two came out on 4K, just on their initial theatrical release, and then they got released later on 4K. But I don't think that any like Dead Man's Chest and the third one, those ones, I want the original trilogy on 4K, and I want them in nice 4Ks. Is really what I'm getting at here. I saw all those day one in theaters. Curse of the Black Pearl was a big deal when I was in school. I remember we had like a school, like the whole school sat around and we watched Curse of the Black Pearl. I guess they felt like, oh, PG-13 Disney movie. We can show these to all these 13 and 14-year-olds in school because it's they're gonna love it. They weren't wrong. I did love it, but I feel like I get what they were going for. They didn't have to have anyone sign anything or anything like that. Shamrock Balls wrote, "Does he really outsmart Nicholson, John, or did Nicholson's arrogance get the better of him?" Well, that's what I think Tom Cruise knew. I think Tom Cruise knew that he was going to lean into Jack Nicholson's arrogance, that Jack Nicholson is all about himself. He's confident in himself. He's a cocky son of a bitch. Look at when they first meet, and he makes him salute him, and make sure he does the proper, like, if the chain of command, don't break the chain of command. You respect the top dog, and he's the top dog. He's a colonel, so he wants to be appreciated and respected more than anything. And I think that's what Tom Cruise was able to maneuver out of him. I mean, it's a combination of Cruise, Pollock, and more. They all kind of came up with this way, but they knew that he would not take being disrespected well, and that it would blind him with anger and fury to the point where he's confessing on the stand to committing a code red. He's confessing to committing breaking a law. Essentially, that's why he gets arrested. And I think that Tom Cruise that's why I think he was able to outsmart him with that, at least in my opinion. Jack Nicholson was definitely his own worst enemy in that scenario. You just shut your mouth. You don't have to even say anything, really. Nobody's forcing you to, but there's certain people out there that just love to talk about themselves more than anything, and just to hear themselves talk, and all they're chasing out there is just the respect, even if it's forced respect. It's not earned respect. He just believes that he's earned that respect, and even if they don't respect him, they're going to respect him. So that's how I kind of view the end of A Few Good Men. But the end of that movie I love that movie. Great Rob Reiner movie. But does anyone else kind of find the very end of A Few Good Men a little bit cheesy, when the one guy is leaving and then he stands and finally salutes Tom Cruise, but it's an earned respect, and he's like, oh, there's an officer on deck, salutes him and walks off. I always felt like that's a little too schmaltzy at the very end of it, but that's kind of just a minor complaint on my part. I don't know if you guys have felt that or not. And then Kevin L just asked, better filmography, Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise? Wow. That's a real tough one. And honestly, they pretty much have been doing it side by side from the beginning. Tom Cruise got a start in 1981, kind of took off in the mid 80s. Same thing with Tom Hanks. He was on Bosom Buddies. And then by like the mid 80s, Tom Cruise kind of started to get famous, become that superstar. Tom Hanks was a little bit behind him through the mid to late 80s. Tom Hanks pretty much just did comedy. And then in the early 1990s, he was still kind of doing comedy, Tom Hanks, but then by 92, he started to finally start leading into the dramas, and then he kind of caught up to Tom Cruise. And then you could argue that Tom Hanks passed Tom Cruise because he started to become the more recognizable actor, the more respected actor, whereas Tom Cruise, by the 2000s, became an action star. Tom Hanks is no action star. He's been in some action movies, but he's more of a dramatic actor. So if I was going to pick who I think has the better filmography, I'm probably still gonna take Tom Hanks, if I'm being honest. Tom Hanks is actually my favorite actor ever, but that's a tough call. So, but I'm still gonna take Tom Hanks. As much as I love Tom Cruise, I still have to take Tom Hanks, just because that's my guy. That's really hard, man. That's the toughest one I've had in a while because I love both guys. Lorenzo Harris, Man of God, wrote, "I blind bought Days of Thunder 4K because of your review. Because of your review, it's better than the first Top Gun movie, in my opinion." Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate you saying that, Lorenzo, because I 100% agree. I think it's better than the first Top Gun movie too. I've always like I know that it's very similar. They've referred to it as Top Gun on Wheels. Top Gun on Wheels. That doesn't mean it's not better though. It means they got it right. They perfected that. Tony Scott perfected the look and everything once they got the Days of Thunder. Are they both cheesy? Of course they are, but I love that. I love Days of Thunder. Shamrock Balls wrote, "Fair porch job. Maybe it's just because I'm a Nicholson fan, lol. If he said nothing, as you say, Cruz was screwed. It kind of felt like Cruz's plan wasn't working in the direction of the back end. Back and forth just evolved to the point it was about getting the last word in. Yeah, no, if that was their last stint, that was their last ditch effort. They had to force Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men to confess, or they had nothing. They were going to lose. So really, that's what it is. That kind of Jack Nicholson kind of just fumbled the ball. I guess I see what you're saying, but they had to manipulate Jack Nicholson to, say what he said, or else there was nothing else that could be said, or else that was it. If he would have just said nothing, they had nothing. They lost their star witness. That was it. It was over. So, in my opinion, they got the better of him, but they got lucky as well. That was a lot of luck involved because if they didn't take advantage of that arrogance, it probably wouldn't have happened. MD wrote, "Film you would recommend to someone who has never seen a Tom Cruise movie." I guess if I was going to do that, I think that Tom Cruise, you kind of have to probably like lean him into something. I would say Minority Report is always a good place to start because it's a Tom Cruise movie, but it's also a Spielberg movie. So people always, I feel like if you're going to get on board with that, then you can probably go out and spread your wings a little bit. Like Eyes Wide Shut and The Born on the Fourth of July are more of the dramatic stuff. So you kind of come back to that a little bit later, in my opinion. And the Mission Impossibles, the Top Guns, that stuff you kind of watch in the beginning. You get to see the action star, then you kind of go back for like Rain Man and stuff like that. So I'd say Minority Report though is kind of the best of both worlds. Vanilla Sky, like I love Vanilla Sky, but that's another one you watch on like the back end when you're ready to get your mind blown. uh Lord Raiden wrote, "Jack Nicholson is the better Joker." Yeah, I said it. Fight me. You came to the right chat, buddy, because you got Shamrock in here, and I know he agrees with me. And we both also agree that Jack Nicholson is the best Joker. So you get no fight here from us. We both really do love Jack Nicholson, the Joker. So 100% agree with that. I love his performance in that movie. He was born to play the Joker. So right now, also Robsta's here. He wrote, "American Made is underrated as fuck. Also, Eyes Wide Shut needs a 4K." I agree 100% with you, buddy. American Made is very underrated. That has a 4K release. I don't have it though on 4K, but that is actually a very underrated movie. It's just I don't know why too. It kind of just came and went. It's got a cool story. I remember people comparing it to Blow. Blow is a better movie, don't get me wrong, but American Made is a good movie. Entertaining as hell too. Moves along at a great pace. And Eyes Wide Shut needing a 4K is so desperate. I'm hoping we get that maybe this year. Again, it's the gap in the Kubrick collection that really pisses me off too, because we really have everything else. I'm trying to think if we don't, because last year we got The Killing on 4K, Paths of Glory. We had Spartacus already, Clockwork Orange. We've had pretty much everything. 2001, Doctor Strangelove, like all these. Why don't we have Eyes Wide Shut? People love Eyes Wide Shut. Shamrock Balls wrote, "I forgot about my Minority Report. That was a good one." Yeah, he is good in that. He's a real good. He That was a good performance of that was a good performance by him in that movie. Again, like that kind of led to War of the Worlds, and him and Spielberg kind of just had a falling out. I guess that was also a young Colin Farrell in Minority Report, which is funny because I might be the first place I ever saw Colin Farrell in. I remember in the early 2000s, he had like that, Daredevil, and then SWAT was a big deal. They were trying to make Colin Farrell into a movie star. And I like that Colin Farrell kind of became a serious actor because once he kind of started getting into like certain other dramatic roles, I really think we finally got the real Colin Farrell. And Colin Farrell is actually the best part of season 2 of True Detective. If you guys have ever watched that show, the second season's god awful, but Colin Farrell's fantastic in that. So, and he was also, he should have won the Academy. Well, I don't know if he should have won, but he was so good in the Banshees of Inisherin, and I would have loved to see him win an Academy Award for that. He's great in that, and in Bruges. Anything he did with Martin McDonough is great. Oh, and MD wrote, does no one like Rock of Ages? I like Rock of Ages, MD. I'm gonna tell you guys all right now. I know it's a jukebox musical, but I love that kind of music, the 80s hair metal stuff. Journey. I love all that kind of music. When it comes to my musical taste, I'm full blown pop fan. I don't know why. I last night I sat down, I turned on Netflix, and I put on the Wham documentary, and I sat there with a shit-eating grin on my face the entire time. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Careless Whisper and Wake Me Up Before You Go Go are both classic songs. I don't care what anyone says. They are awesome. But like I'm an 80s junkie when it comes to music like that. I know it's all bubblegum pop. I know. I understand, but I still love it. I love it so much. So yeah, I do like Rock of Ages. I thought that movie was a lot of fun. And again, Tom Cruise just playing it up, leaning right into everything you would thought he would lean into. And then Shamrock Roll knows no fight there. Okay, actually, Robster wrote Wham! Freedom, great song. That is a great song. The first Freedom, I love that. Get your freedom. Yeah, no, that's a great song. Yeah, Wham! Honestly, they were great. They're only around for a little while. That whole documentary is just about that, so it doesn't really go too much into the George Michael's personal life or solo career after. But I recommend you guys check that out if you're a fan of 80s stuff, or if you're just a fan of Wham! Kevin L., which Tom Cruise character would you want to hang out with the most? Well, a lot of his characters kind of are assholes. I kind of think I'd probably want to hang out with probably Jerry Maguire if I had to guess. You don't want to hang out with the character from The Firm because he's definitely dead. I've heard that on the again a rewatchables reference. They're like, oh, he probably got killed 10 minutes after the movie. I agree 100%. He definitely got murdered. The mob is gonna get him. Maverick today seems like a cool guy to hang out with. Ethan Hunt is definitely all business. He looks like I mean, he's great with his friends, but his friends are all into the same stuff. They're all into the spy espionage thing. So I'm not going to want to hang out with Ethan Hunt. Uh, who else would you want to hang out with? The guy from Risky Business. He probably grew up to be cool, right? I'm definitely Vincent's dead. If he was alive, I don't think we'd be hanging out. So I don't know about that. I'd probably like to hang out with Lieutenant Caffrey. I feel like actually, he seems like he'd be a cool guy to have a beer with. Loves YooHoo, so I think I'd probably choose Lieutenant Caffrey. I was gonna say Cole Trickle, like the big NASCAR guy that he is, but I don't know. That's another one. I don't think he's around anymore. I think he lived too far on the edge. If I'm being 100% honest with you guys. And Kevin L wrote, I'd want to hang out with Tom Cruise in Cocktail. Are you sure about that, Kevin? Because do you remember what happens to his best friend in Cocktail? It doesn't end well. Now you could argue that's his own doing, that he's the reason why he ended up like that. But a lot of Tom Cruise's friends don't end up well. Goose, uh, unfortunately, the whatever the hell that is on the top of the plane didn't work out well. So and Michael Rooker gets messed up, and in Days of Thunder. So I don't know if I'd want to be a friend of Tom Cruise in any of his movies, like as far as being his buddy, except in A Few Good Men. He seems like he's a pretty good hang there, I think. But I don't know if I could hang out with him in the Cocktail. Although he'll whip you up a great drink because clearly he knows how to make a good drink. He's one of the best at it, in my opinion, as far as Cocktail goes. I almost watched that last night again before. I wanted to rewatch that one before this because I love Cocktail. That's just one of those turn off your brains off. It's a stupid 80s movie, and my God, it's a stupid 80s movie, but I love it. I put it up there like it's in the same ballpark as Roadhouse. I know that Roadhouse is probably a better movie, but I still really enjoy Cocktail too. I still think that that's just that 80s cheese that I just absolutely eat up. And that's another reason why I enjoyed like the the Wham documentary, just to circle back to that. I just really love looking at like what people wore back then, like what they were talking about. I heard a really funny quote, and I always quote it. I think it's hysterical. He's like, I love the 80s. That's when men were men and men dressed like women. Because that's pretty much how everyone looked back then. Like the hair metal stuff. Music was so good in the 1980s, in my opinion. I know, it's cheesy, and I love these cheesy 80s movies that feature all that. the 80s were just my favorite time as far as, I mean, I wasn't even around. It was just my favorite time just for movies and music. I know there was, that's all the stuff that's in the pop culture and stuff that's underneath that doesn't live up, but I still like to go back and I get really nostalgic for it. Uh, Kevin L wrote, favorite Tom Cruise love interest in a movie. Well, I would say Kelly McGinnis, probably from Top Gun. They have no chemistry at all, but she is gorgeous in that movie. Or Nicole Kidman from Eyes Wide Shut. But I like the younger one who's in Days of Thunder. I think is probably the best. He's never been the best on-screen lover, that's for sure. You'd think he'd pick Jerry Maguire, but Jerry Maguire, I don't know. I mean, like they look like they're going to stand the test of time. I think the two of them, so I can't swoop in there. Um, and other than that, like he doesn't really have like he's got his fiance obviously, and then his eventual wife in the Mission Impossible movies, but those don't really have love interests either. Demi Moore was pretty hot. Shamrock Balls, I agree, but the haircut. Demi Moore did a lot of stuff in the early '90s with her hair. GI Jane, she shaved it off. In Gold, she in the movie Ghost, she got her hair cut like Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber. But Demi Moore, when she grows her hair out, gorgeous, definitely gorgeous. I'm looking at, was it the first or second Charlie's Angels movie she was in? I think it was the first one, but I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me on it. Might be. And then MD wrote, what do you say Tom Cruise is the American Jackie Chan for stunt work? 100%. Very different stunt work, obviously. Jackie Chan is a professional martial artist, and he just knows how to do a lot of stuff that Tom Cruise can't do. But I also don't think that Tom Cruise can do a lot of stuff that Jackie Chan can do. It's like vice versa. I think that, Tom Cruise is really involved in the actual filmmaking process of as far as the stunt work goes, whereas, jumping motorcycles, hanging out of planes, whether it be running on the side of the building in Dubai. Jackie Chan's stunt work is obvious because he is a human stunt machine. He is the stunt. That's what Jackie Chan is. He's the one doing all the stuff with his hands, his feet. He can do all that. Tom Cruise, he can fight, he can run, but a lot of it is like putting his body on the line for like a crazy jump or something like that. But yeah, I would say Tom Cruise is 100% the male Jackie Chan, in my opinion, if I had to pick that. Shamrock Balls wrote Lloyd Christmas, he must work out. Look at the buns on that one. I seen Demi in an episode of Tales from the Crypt and she was smoking, he wrote. Yeah, I mean Demi Moore, depending on, she was just doing so much weird stuff with her hair, and someone's hair for some reason, maybe it's because I don't have the best of eyes, will just throw me for a loop, and I just can never move past her hair in Ghost. Like I get what's like, you're with Patrick Swayze. This guy is built and just shaped like a god. And that's the haircut you whip out for him. Maybe that's why he had to get shot, is because you cut your hair like that. And he was just trying to get away. Kevin L wrote top 3 Tom Cruise stunts. Well, I guess he didn't really, I mean, he did really drive a race car, Days of Thunder, but a lot of that stuff was done by race car drivers like Bobby Hamilton. But then he really started to do it, I think, once we got to Mission Impossible. So I'm actually going to say the Mission Impossible 2 stunt would be in my top 3, the one where he's climbing the rocks, because apparently he really did freebase that, and he had almost no like assistance to him. And again, same thing in Mission Impossible 2 when he gets the knife and he goes to get stabbed in the eye. Real knife, because Tom Cruise didn't want them to use a fake knife because they wanted to get a close-up. That's Tom Cruise's choice. And they just put it on a string, and the string would have no give once it got to his eye. So it's supposed to not go forward at all. So Tom Cruise really did that with a real knife, and his eye is really open like that in Mission Impossible 2. So that's up there. And then the Dubai stunt, running on the side of the world's tallest building, I would never, ever do that. I mean, maybe for the money he's getting paid, but the Dubai stunt in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol is absolutely insane as far as things go. But I think that honestly, the thing with the knife, that's scarier because you are anticipating that knife coming and you're hoping that nothing happens. So the knife stunt in Mission Impossible 2 is definitely up there for me. Shamrock Balls wrote, what if Swayze died of a heart attack after seeing Moore's new haircut? I would have been like, I don't care how beautiful you are, Demi. You're gonna pack your shit up and you're getting out of here, because take yourself home back to Bruce Willis with his thinning hairline, because that's what will let you because you're not taking that here with me and my golden god look of being Patrick Swayze. All right, I was in Roadhouse. I'm just playing around, by the way. Kevin L wrote three actors you like Tom Cruise to work with who he hasn't already. Tom Cruise is actually I'm not too sure. I was trying to think who hasn't he worked with. Obviously, he's been working with a lot of the same actors lately. I would have said Lawrence Fishburne, but they actually worked together in Mission Impossible 3. Um, it'd be funny to see him work with like comedians. Like he only did a little bit of comedy. It would be funny to see him work with guys like Will Ferrell or something like that. Will Ferrell though might be a little past his comedy prime now. I would like to see him actually work with Lakeith Stanfield. I think that would be a cool thing. Lakeith Stanfield's becoming one of my favorite actors right now. I think he would be cool. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the new Haunted Mansion movie. Who else hasn't he worked with that? I really kind of want to just see him work with some comedians, really, because like I feel like that's like we've seen him with Henry Cavill, so it's like he's done the action stuff. Would be cool to actually see him work with The Rock because for a long time I think The Rock stock has fallen lately. But I think for a long time, they were like the two bankable stars. Like about 5 years ago, there was Tom Cruise and there was The Rock as far as box office goes. But once kind of Tom Cruise kind of kept going, whereas The Rock kind of I think started to feel his own loins a little bit too much, got a little bit too big for like his own good, and he started to believe that he was the backbone. I would really love to see the two of them work together, though. I still think that it would work well. Has Tom Cruise ever worked with Kurt Russell? Because I would also love to see him work with Kurt Russell. And Emma Stone. I think Emma Stone would be another one that they would work great together with. Kevin Alvaro, I like to see him work with Denzel Washington. I would have loved that. That would be a match made in heaven. I'm surprised that's another one where they probably could have. Like in the movie Philadelphia, Tom Cruise at the time was a great actor. Like he was doing different stuff. He could have been in Philadelphia. That's when you kind of could have swapped out Tom Hanks and Tom Cruise, and you could have done Tom Cruise in that movie. I think that's the time where he was actually really into the acting style and not just doing action. And I think you could swap him out in the movie Philadelphia. I would have loved to see that. Marvel character he fits into or DC. So MD wrote that. And guys, I don't know if you know this, but originally they wanted Tom Cruise to do Iron Man, but he didn't want his face behind the suit. They were even playing around with like a clear mask and everything like that. But they ended up backing off of that and not doing it. So, that's kind of why it didn't work out. That's kind of like that's the little stuff with Tom Cruise that like like I always tell you guys, like Arnold's like one of my favorite people of all time. He's an inspiration. Tom Cruise, like I love his movies. I love the actor, but the person Tom Cruise is a little shaky and weird. And that's one of those things where you don't want to be in a movie because your face gets covered. Obviously Stallone was the same way with Judge Dredd. Keith Urban wasn't like that, but I would absolutely, if he was going to be in the DC right now, I don't think that we would have him be like any of the big guys like Superman or Batman. A younger Tom Cruise could have been Superman, in my opinion. He would never be able to pull off Spider-Man. Doctor Strange, though, I think a younger Tom Cruise would have been a perfect Doctor Strange. I'm actually surprised that nobody pitched that to him because that's exactly the Tom Cruise arc. That he's a cocky doctor who and now loses the ability to do surgery. The thing that he's the best at, the thing that kind of made him this cocky, arrogant son of a bitch that he would end up being. He would have been a perfect Doctor Strange. You wouldn't even have to have Benjamin Cumberbatch do the accent. You could have had Tom Cruise just being Tom Cruise. I think that would have been a perfect role for him. Is this Doctor Strange? In my opinion, that's literally the Tom Cruise arc to a T. And Kevin Alvaro, I would have liked Tom Cruise to play Patrick Bateman. He would have been good as Patrick Bateman, definitely. And I mean, in a way, Tom Cruise was kind of like that, playing roles similar in the 1980s. But man, I think that still might be Christian Bale's best performance as is Patrick Bateman from the movie American Psycho. He's perfect in that. He plays that movie. He plays that role just enough of like a psychopath, but somebody who has like a functioning psychopath walking through the world, with that cheesy smile, but yet underneath it all, he's just this angry, horrible person. I mean, Christian Bale's another one of our great actors too. He gets obviously he gets appreciated a lot for what he did with Batman, but go watch him in like movies like The Fighter. The guy just has range for days, and he does the stuff with his body that I don't know how actors do that. Robert De Niro's done it. You've seen Jared Leto do it, like up and down weight wise. I have a hard time just maintaining my weight now. And I'm not even like doing it for any reason. It's just I'm miserable if I'm eating something healthy. I don't like it at all. I want to eat Taco Bell 7 days a week, but I can't. Kevin Alvaro, do you think Tom Cruise would have made a good Batman in the 90s? I would have liked to see it, but look what the Batman franchise did to anybody not named Michael Keaton in the 90s. We had Val Kilmer give it a try. He started with Tom Cruise as obviously Iceman and Top Gun. I think that Val Kilmer, in my opinion, is still the worst Batman. Not the worst Batman movie. Batman Forever is not. I think George Clooney's a better Batman, in my opinion. George Clooney is essentially doing what Tom Cruise probably would have done. So I don't know. I don't think that at the time, I just don't think it would have worked out in the 90s. Had he been that age in the modern world, I think he probably would be perfect working in the Nolan Batman style. But I think he was too old by then. But then again, the guy's still Ethan Hunt. So what the hell do I know? Is Valkyrie worth watching? I don't think I've ever seen Valkyrie, unless it's the one I'm thinking of. If it is, then no, it's not. Valkyrie. Oh, I have seen this. No, I didn't love that movie. If I'm remembering it correctly, that was one of the ones that kind of were forgotten at the time. It's not a bad movie, but I don't love that. I wouldn't put that down there. Like I still think that The Last Samurai is my least favorite, or even like the Jack. It's like down there though. It's very forgettable. I mean, if you're trying to bang out every single cruise movie, like I said at the beginning, if you guys weren't here, I haven't seen Legend, the Ridley Scott one from 1985. It's really the big one that I have to see, but for the most part, I've seen them all. But I haven't. Oh, see, Shamrock Balls also said, "Oh, actually didn't mind Valkyrie." Yeah, I got to go back and rewatch that, but I don't remember hating it or loving it. I kind of just remember being like, "Oh, it's okay." It's been a while. It's like the Mummy. Like I don't want to go back and rewatch the Mummy, but I also don't remember hating the Mummy. Like people like point to that as the worst Tom Cruise movie, but he was fine. He just wasn't that great. But nobody was that great in that movie. Remember Russell Crowe in the beginning of that movie? Yeah, it's just not that great of a movie. But it's not also the worst movie. I just think it's forgettable. I feel like we always kind of put movies in the best and worst category. Like if the movie was either great or the movie was bad. But how many times have you gone to the movies and you just left and you're like, it's all right, and then you just don't think about it like ever again, or maybe like you're flipping cable through channels on cable. We don't do that anymore, but you used to, in the sense that you flip by something and be like, oh, I remember seeing that, think about it for like 30 seconds about how much if you liked it or hate it, and then you keep going. There's plenty of movies like that in the world that you're just your regular, 5, 6, 7 out of 10 movies that they're not bad, but they're just not great. They're just movies that pass the time, but they didn't offend you. You didn't feel like you were going to gouge your eyes out or, blow your brains out of boredom. Like you didn't worry about like things like that, but you just kind of like a movie. Like I like to call those like Saturday morning movies. Like if you're like getting up, having a cup of coffee, and you just have something on. You can watch like a half hour, 45 minutes if you're not in the TV, because I think TV kind of replaced us doing that. I remember doing that a lot, where I'd watch just a little bit of a movie, or you catch like the same movie halfway through or something like that. We don't do that anymore. Now, if like you got a half hour to kill, I know I'll put on like an episode of Always Sunny or Parks and Recreation or something like, just a sitcom, because you guys have access to all of them nowadays. But I don't know. That's just how it was. I got to rewatch Valkyrie is what I'm getting at here before I started rambling on a little bit there. What time is it? So I got to get out of here in a few minutes. So if you guys have any last questions or anything you want to shout out before we get out of here, send those in now, and then yeah, we'll do this again next week. Next week, guys, if you're going to be around, we'll do it again, same time, 2:30. I'm going to have a list come out this week. I'm going to rank my Nolan movies, but we're all going to talk about Christopher Nolan next week if you guys are into that. What did you think about the new movie All the Right Moves? About the movie All the Right Moves. All the Right Moves is a great movie from the 80s. That came out the same year as what am I drawing about? I think that was 83 that movie came out. That movie's the same, MDS, the same thing. That is a good early Tom Cruise movie. Came out before The Outsiders, I believe, too. So oh no, it came out after. Same year as Risky Business. So what year was that? I think 83. That's the year that All the Right Moves came out. That's actually a pretty good movie, but that's more like Tom Cruise playing like the stereotypical kid, the role of the time of the early 80s. It's still pretty good though. I remember hearing that's another one I heard might get a 4K release, which is weird. I don't know why, but that's one that's from the 1980s. That's a good movie. That's the iconic one on the film, on the poster, where he's wearing the Letterman jacket. He's got a football in his hand. Looks just like something you would expect from the 1980s. Uh, Actually, Is Coach in that movie? The guy who played Coach? I don't know. No, it's not. It's Ed O'Neill. I'm drawn. Different guy. Because the Craig. No, it's Ed O'Neill. Yeah, I'm sorry. I get Ed O'Neill and Craig T. Nelson mixed up. I don't know why. And Craig T. Nelson was Coach, not Ed O'Neill. Or am I mixing them up? I don't know. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it here for me. Thank you all so much for being here with me on another episode of Let's Talk Live with John. I hope you guys enjoyed talking Tom Cruise movies with me. Remember, we're going to be here again next Saturday doing the same thing. So 2:30 next Saturday. We'll probably talk all things Nolan, unless you guys don't want to talk Nolan. We can pick up any subject you guys want. And I will be seeing you guys later. See you later, Shamrock. Later, buddy. Later, MD. Later, Kevin L. Everybody else who's left since the beginning. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. And you guys enjoy the rest of your day.